Oración para los viajeros. Esta es una oración por la misericordia, para que andes con pie firme y visión clara, por el pan para tu cuerpo y tu espíritu, por el agua, para que llegues seguro y para todos aquellos que encuentres en el camino. Remember when we began this pilgrimage together? Like all pilgrims, we started the journey excited to see where the path would lead. Buoyed by the expectancy of finding something priceless along the way, we barely noticed the difficulties at first. But like all pilgrimages, this one has inevitably become strenuous. Some days we wish we were already at the end. On days when the path is rocky, winding, and steep, we wish we'd never started. Midway through our journey together, let's remember the words of Angela Herrera's Prayer for Travelers. This is a prayer for traveling mercies and sure-footedness, for clear vision, for bread for your body and spirit, for water, for your safe arrival, and for everyone you see along the way.
Good morning, everyone. We ring this peace bowl this morning for our collective hope of peace. We also ring this peace bowl to welcome our 4 members who signed the book virtually yesterday, Michael and Deidre Schwartz, Tracy Augustine, and Chris Hawthorne. Let us welcome them into our community. We also, at this time, and Patrick and Ardella Moran, they signed the book earlier, so they weren't signing yesterday, but I don't believe I have welcomed them right at this time, and I can see them in their square with their dog, and we welcome you too. And it is a happy thing that our congregation is growing, even in this time when the ways we meet can be very different than before. We also at this time acknowledge that these lands that we love, where we love to hike and we love to kayak and we love to just sit and look out into the ponderosas, that these lands we love are the lands of the Yavapai people, the Wipukepas, the Tokepayas, the Cuevkepayas, and the Yavapai. We give thanks for the sun that rose this morning. Let us sing together, morning has come.
Good morning and welcome to Granite Peak Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Prescott, Arizona. I'm Leslie Grady, your worship associate today. We extend a warm welcome to all. We are glad you are able to join us. We hope you are in good health. We want to stay connected, so please join us for the breakout rooms after the service. This will give us time to chat with congregants in small groups. If you are joining us for the first time, please check out our website for more information about us, prescottuu.org. This is the mission statement of our congregation. We are a compassionate spiritual community that celebrates diversity, nurtures the personal and spiritual growth of all ages, shares our gifts, promotes justice for all, and serves the world we live in. We extend our thanks to all who contribute to the presentation of our service today. Heather Knowles for technical direction, Mary Lou Prince for musical direction, and special music from Russ, Lena, and John Erickson. Thanks to Norma West for her beautiful photos and Jack Stanton for his testimonial. Although we are physically apart, We are still in community, and we continue with some of our meetings and activities via the internet. So please continue to check the Weekly Peek, our website, and Reverend Patty's videos for announcements. We are in the midst of our stewardship campaign, and our dinner will be March the 6th. Join our regularly weekly Zoom meetings. Together, Wednesday forum, Wednesday afternoon storytelling, and Friday lunch with the minister. Find connection information and other announcements in our order of service. Today's children's faith development will be at 11:30 via Zoom. Contact Bev Bostrom. We begin our service in the Unitarian Universalist tradition of lighting the chalice. Today's chalice reading is called Forgiveness by Amanda Eudice Kessler. It may be the hardest thing we will ever do, caught up in our own self-righteousness, honing our pain. The one who offended may not deserve forgiveness, and we are not obliged to offer it. Why then should we forgive? Because we have all caused pain, because we all miss the mark, because we can deepen our souls if we forgive, because restoring even one relationship heals many hearts, because we would be forgiven ourselves, because drawing closer to one another builds our communities, because the alternative is endless bitterness, because the world we seek to create is a world filled with forgiveness, because we need not remain caught up in our self-righteousness and pain. It may be the hardest thing we will ever do. Let us take the first step now. We light this challenge, a symbol of our heritage in gratitude for this beloved community. And now our gathering words.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. We give thanks this morning that we are in warm places, or all the places I can see that are gathering here together. But let us hold those as we begin, those who are in Texas, who are freezing, and those who are mourning the loss of those who died because of the cold temperatures and other difficulties. Let us hold them in our community. I begin this morning with one of my favorite poems. I feel like I finally have a chance to say it in my opening words. It's by the poet Rumi, who is also one of my favorite poets. He wrote, "Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense." And with those words, I invite you into one of those wonderful Unitarian Universalist songs that gets us going, the fire of our commitment. Let us sing together. Please join me in saying together our covenant. And also thank you for singing. I could see a lot of you really singing out there. Okay, let us say our covenant together. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community. Thus do we covenant together. And now let us listen to Jack Stanton.
My name is Jack Stanton. I'm originally from Madison, Wisconsin. My first contact with Unitarian Universalists was with the congregation whose building was designed by UU Frank Lloyd Wright. It was built and donated to the Madison congregation by the Marshall Erdman Company, my former employer. As most of you know, ours is a liberal and minister-led congregation with an emphasis on social justice, with child and adult faith development programs. Also, we have both women and men's discussion groups. One of our goals is to hire a social justice coordinator to manage our outreach projects. We provide food, household products, and personal care items to financially disadvantaged people in our community through a food and household donation project for the Latinx population and others in need nearby to our building. I was a very small part of the Lynx holiday breakfast and food event this past year. I felt good that I got up and helped that morning because of the joy and appreciation I witnessed among those who received our donations. Our budget is almost entirely determined by our pledges, so your generous pledge is greatly appreciated and very important. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you. Wasn't it wonderful to see our sanctuary? And now I invite you, let us take a deep breath together and enter into our time of joys and sorrows. Let us breathe together and feel that wonderful earth under our feet. That earth that has supported us these many years. Today, as every time we meet, we each carry our joys and sorrows with us, and those of the greater community and the world. Today, let us hold Taya Park in joy. She is now home from the hospital, and she's surrounded by the love of her husband Bob's daughter and husband. We are happy she moved through that time and acknowledge how much love is around her. Let us hold Dick Fox, whose daughter is now with him, and Eunice Lovejoy and Janer Eldridge, and Karen Anderson, who is still on that long journey to wholeness. Eric Jarnigan is back at work, but he's still recovering from the difficult illness that he had. And Karen Doyle is in Las Fuentes and would still love to hear from you. She'd love to get your cards. This morning we hold Frank Mell. He is a friend to many in the congregation. He lost his wife over a year ago to cancer and is now undergoing cancer therapy at the Mayo Clinic. This past week, I have learned that many in our community are connected with those pictures that have made us cry from Texas, of people struggling with the loss of electricity, freezing temperatures, lack of food. Let us hold this country and all those who are experiencing sorrow. Let us hold the leaders of this country and ask for their wisdom. Let us hold all those who are mourning loved ones from the loss, from all those ways that we lose loved ones, and the way that is so prominent right now with COVID-19, and those with lingering after effects. Let us hold the immigrant families who are in need of food and who marvelously have found their way to our doors, for our food keeps disappearing. And may we learn the ways of justice so that we can make that food pantry obsolete. I will now ring the bell and I invite you to say the names of any of those who are on your hearts and minds, and then we will have a time of silence, after which we will enter into a time of meditation and prayer. Glenda, George, Harold. David. Isaac. Isabel. Please join me in a spirit of meditation and prayer. Spirit of life, spirit of love, we are here. We have shown up in this place carrying the joys and sorrows of our personal lives and of the world around us. As the last of the snow is making its way down into the earth that needs water so much, we collectively ask for a blessing on this earth and for the ways that we personally can transform our lives to be in harmony with the healing of this earth. We give thanks for community, for love that surrounds those who have been in the hospital. And we ask for ways to know the people who need our hands to reach out to them. And we ask those who are in need of help within this congregation and our greater community that they will have the courage to reach out and let us know. We give thanks for the veterans who live around us, for the children who are making use of our libraries. We ask for all the children right now who are suffering from this study, who do not like to study at a distance, and whose parents cannot oversee their work. We ask for ways for people to learn, for children to be able to to have a good experience this year. And I wonder if there is a part we can play in this. We give thanks for being a community that searches for justice and searches for ways to reach out. We ask for wisdom for this community, for the greater community, for this country, and for this world. For all these things we pray. In your many names, amen. And now let us sing with Lena and Russ, walking with you, with the realization too that some of us do not walk. We are using wheelchairs, but let us sing together.
Walking with you is my prayer.
This is the time in our service when we normally gather the offering. Let us embrace the feeling of connection and community that we have when we gather each week. Let us remember that this congregation and its programs are supported by your generosity. We also give back to the greater community through our Seeds of Support program. During the month of February, our recipient is the Hungry Kids Project. Please read about them in your order of service in the newsletter. To give during this distance time, please go to prescottuu.org. On the bottom left-hand side, click the word Donate to contribute. The link is also available in the chat on this video. What is given in love is received in gratitude. Blessed be. Please enjoy this musical interlude.
Yehuda Amichai wrote these words, which were translated by Stephen Mitchell. From the place where we are right, flowers will never grow in the spring. The place where we are right is hard and trampled like a yard. But doubts and loves dig up the world like a mole, like a plow. And a whisper will be heard in the place where the ruined house once stood. Every year in the United States, over 600,000 people enter prison gates. And people go to jail 10.6 million times each year. At least 1 in 4 people who go to jail will be arrested again within the same year, often those dealing with poverty, mental illness, and substance abuse disorders, whose problems only worsen with incarceration. Let us listen to the story of someone who ended up in Folsom Prison.
I hear the train a-comin', rolling around the bend. I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know when. Well, I'm stuck in Folsom Prison, and time keeps dragging on. But that train keeps rolling down the San Antone. Now, when I was a baby, my mama told me, son, always be a good boy and don't ever play with guns. But I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. When I hear that whistle blowing, I hang my head and cry. Well, I bet there's fine folks eating in a fancy dining car. I bet they're drinking coffee and smoking fine cigars. I know I had it coming. I know I can't be free. Oh, but that train keeps moving, and that's what tortures me. Now, if they freed me from this prison, if that railroad train were mine, you can bet I'd move it on a little farther down the line. Far from Folsom Prison, that's where I want to stay. I'd let that big 8-wheeler take my blues away.
Thank you, John. Do you remember that he sang that for the first time for us last year, almost a year ago, in our first Zoom service in the sanctuary, when we were wondering what lay ahead of us, thinking that maybe by June we would be meeting in person again, and here it is, February of the next year. I am grateful to all of you. I cannot even express how grateful I am for your perseverance and resilience, for showing up. And in this song, the singer is not trying to convince us of his innocence. And I believe he is inviting us out of that binary of guilt and innocence to a space beyond wrong and right, to a place of compassion for a man, a human, who is crying when he hears that whistle blow of a train that represents freedom to him. I want you to imagine for a moment that the star of that Folsom Prison Blues gets out of prison. And by that time, he's quite an old man. And he decides to move to Prescott because there's a love of country music here. And he doesn't really have good feelings about the evangelical church he grew up in. He's thinking that he wants to explore what he believes, and his parole officer is encouraging him to find a church community that will accept him as part of that work that is in front of him to do of becoming reintegrated into society. And that's how I come to spend an hour with him in my office, doing some paperwork that is kind of a covenant between us of how he will be in our community. I have to let leadership know about his presence among us and make sure that he isn't teaching children or spending time with them alone. And when I spend time with this man recently out of prison, he talks about the price he has paid in those 30 years he spent and how he longs to embark on a new life. And then he says to me, I won't stay for coffee hour. I will just slip out after the services. He is nervous about people asking him about his life because his history is that of being in prison. I don't want to embarrass people, he tells me. And I see him come in each week and sit at some distance from people and then scoot out before I can even shake his hand and wish him well. I wonder what welcome he would have if he stayed, because I wish that that man could have a place among us, an honored place, for he has a story that we could learn from, and I believe his presence would be a gift. And I wonder, what if we considered that anyone among us might have spent time in prison? One of the great works of a congregation can be getting involved in helping people have their records expunged. And we can also do that work of helping people in many ways reintegrate into society and start to trust the world around them again. And I believe our open-hearted welcome is a step in the healing of the shame and guilt that accompanies our society's penal system. Just like we should never assume someone's level of education with questions like, what school did you go to? What did you study? Those questions when you talk with someone who is new. I invite you to try to stay in the present. Think of that man just out of Folsom Prison with questions like, what do you like about this place? What brought you through our doors? You know, I have some questions that were brought up in the sermon. What do you think about those things? Do you know anything about Unitarian Universalism? What is your passion? Share your experience. Talk about ideas, about the ways you were involved in the life of this community. Draw the circle wide and leave it up to them to tell you about where they have been. Give people room to feel comfortable and welcomed just by their presence, not because they have something in common with us, a similar level of education or political perspective or life career. That is the welcome I hope for at Granite Peak when we gather together. But also right now we have breakout rooms. That is the welcome I hope for in our breakout rooms. What I'm talking about with our welcome comes out of a much deeper place. I believe that it comes out of that belief in the binary of guilt and innocence, of right and wrong, of our being right and others being wrong. And without a huge amount of work, we carry that with us, and it emerges in the most surprising places. Mary Lou's grandfather, the same one who prayed that she would clean up her language, had a strong sense of guilt and innocence, of his own innocence and the guilt of others. Visiting them, he sometimes looked around and caught something that was out of place, and he'd pose a question. Someone left that window open, or someone made that stain on the carpet. His wife, Ruby, knew that it was impossible to argue with a man who knew he was right, so she would say, well, there are only two of us, so it must have been me. Being human is much messier than simply being right and being wrong. When we lived in a farming village in Japan, our farmers, which were our neighbors, it was a community of only 13 families. They were accustomed to burning garbage. Just like my great-grandmother had a burning pile in the back of her house in Lovell, Wyoming. Our vacations smelled, and I liked that smell. It smelled of my grandmother, that smell of burning compost. And our favorite neighbors who lived next door, the Hoshinos, they had a burning place right below our house. And on a sunny day, which was rare in the winter and also in the spring sometimes, in the autumn, we liked to open our windows and let the air blow through our house. Those days were also good for burning garbage. And the villagers burned everything, even aluminum cans, but especially they burned those plastic containers. And the burning plastics created a very particular kind of sickly sweet smell, along with dioxins, which are highly poisonous chemicals. And by the time we noticed what was happening, our house was full of that poisonous smoke. The Hoshino family had been living in that village for hundreds of years, during which time they had been burning their garbage. They had no idea, even though it was in the newspaper, it was big news that burning plastics made dioxins. But they didn't read that news or connect it with what they did. But in old times, they had been burning straw and wood and kitchen scraps, but now they were burning other things with all those things. And the effect had transformed from a relatively harmless smoke to poisonous smoke. And we were always weighing whether something was important enough to talk with people about. Was it worth the breach of relationship that would inevitably happen? We knew that this one was. And because I have a softer approach, I was the one who was sent to talk with Mr. Hoshino. So I told him about the dioxins and the poison and how it was coming in our windows. He did not think that I was right. After all, his family had been doing that for hundreds of years. And to not be able to burn was not like not being able to clean. Burning was cleaning to them in some way. I begged. This is something you do in Japanese. You become very polite and you beseech people. If you are inside a building, which I was not, but if I had been, I would have gotten down on the floor and bowed and put my head on the floor to show how important it was to me. But we were outside, so I simply bowed very low. And in my most polite and humble language, I said, "Please do this thing. Yoroshiku onegai itashimasu." And while my head was still down, I heard him say, "Wakatta," which means I get it. And then I walked back to our house, pretty certain that at last we would be free of dioxins. Relief. We had taken a stand. We were helping people understand the science, that burning plastics could make them sick. It didn't take long, however, for it to sink in that we might have destroyed with our neighbors, we might have destroyed our relationship with our neighbors in the process. And the Hoshinos were our kindest neighbors, the ones who called when we were snowed in to tell us that their car could get out. Did we need anything at the store? We had been right at a big price. And just as we couldn't bear living with dioxins coming into our house, we couldn't bear living in that village with a deep misunderstanding with those neighbors. So I'm asking you to just take a break from my story for a moment and wonder if your rightness have you ever backed yourself into a place like that, where you have lost a friendship, where you have broken relationship? Let us breathe together for a moment and remember. I can't remember how long it took us to find a solution. I think it happened pretty quickly. But one day, we drove down to the village liquor shop and bought a big case of Asahi Ichiban Shibori beer and a very fancy bottle of sake that had gold leaf on it. We arrived at the Hoshino's door and we put our gifts in the entryway and said, "Please forgive us. Yorushite kudasai." And we again said what I had said earlier, "Yoroshiku onegai itashimasu," which meant in that circumstance, please continue to be in relationship with us. Your relationship is important to us. Mr. Hoshino stood for a long time saying nothing, and our heads were bowed low. Finally, he said, "Yosh." And then he said, "Wakatta." His wife jumped off their entryway step, and she thanked us for the beer and for the sake. And little by little, not all at once, our relationship returned. We found that place between right and wrong. Both of us had been right in a way, and both of us had been wrong. He was continuing the traditions of his ancestors, which was right for him to do, which was what kept that village populated. And he was poisoning the air that we breathed, which was wrong. And we were trying to clean the air, and we were breaking the traditions of the village that had welcomed us. I encourage you to find that place with your neighbors, in the biggest sense of that word, neighbors. Those people closest to you and those people farthest from you. At Granite Peak, with the Neighborhood Outreach Ministry, we are expanding our concept of neighborhood to encompass the veterans who are living across the street. When we meet a neighbor, when we meet anyone, let us begin a practice of not asking people about where they are from. Perhaps they have been homeless or imprisoned. They may have just come from a place where they spent 30 years paying the price for what they did. And now let's stretch ourselves a little further. From what they might have done, let's move to we. What have we done in our lives? When I went to sign up to volunteer at the Juvenile Detention Center, the volunteer coordinator said to me, "These are the ones who were caught." So what about our own lives? A couple of days ago, on my way to our building, just as I was leaving our neighborhood slowly, thank heavens, a teenager came flying down their driveway and across the street, just feet in front of my car. What if I had been speeding? What if I had just had a beer? I think many of us have gone home after a party wondering if we were quite ready to drive. We are all guilty, and we are all innocent. I invite you, let us open the sense of we to encompass the many life experiences that could have taken any of us to prison. There we will find a wide place, a spacious place, where not only newcomers, all of us will feel more at home. Together, let us find that field out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing. I will meet you there. Amen, and may it be so. And now I invite you, let us sing together when our heart is in a holy place. May we open our welcome ever wider. May we grow to see when we have backed ourselves into a corner of rightness. And may we expand our we to include those who have been imprisoned. Let us look beyond right doing and wrongdoing within ourselves, and when we look out into the world, may we work towards wholeness together in this community. Sometimes we have to create this expansive place after someone close to us has died, and we have not had that chance. That death has left us with unfinished business, has left us wishing for that space where we could speak with one another without the burden of being right or wrong. Let us listen in our postlude to Joan Baez sing to her sister who recently died. Let us catch the wind. Let us find those chances before someone dies. And before we extinguish our chalice, I have a little news for you, and that is, it's been going out before this time, but from 1 o'clock, we're going to have a practice phone tree, a kind of fire drill. And if you haven't heard about it, don't worry, but plan on receiving a call around 1. We're going to start this at 1. The phone tree came out of our wanting to be able to contact people in case there was a disaster. But this would also be a way for us to contact each other if there's some action to be involved in. If there's something fun happening in the square, we could all be there in an hour. This is a way for us to be nimble. You will be urged to make the calls you need to make, or you will be waiting for a call. Since some of the phone numbers might not be recognized, make sure all of you leave a message. This is like our fire drill. It will probably be messy, and we'll learn what we need to do with it. And next Sunday, after extinguishing the chalice, we will be talking about the possibilities of raising a flag at our building. We thought there were so many people interested, we thought it would be best to just have you stay after the service. And now together, let us extinguish our chalice, and then we can go into our breakout rooms, during which I hope you talk about those spaces that you have been able to make between wrong and right and guilt and innocence. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go in peace to breakout rooms.